What is... Dax, are you?
Tracking all our cars on Carvana Value Tracker on all our devices? Yes, Kristen, yes I am.
Well, I've been looking for my phone for...
In Dax's domain, we see all. So we always know what our cars are worth.
All of them?
All of them. Value surge, trucks up 3.9%.
That's a great offer.
I know. Sell?
Sell.
Track your car's value with Carvana Value Tracker today.
Over the last 75 years, over 10,000 chemicals have been introduced to our food supply. Yet the EU only allows 300 food additives. But at Thrive Market, we bring our members the highest quality brands and restrict more than 1,000 ingredients found at conventional grocery stores. Making the switch is easy with our Healthy Swaps scanner, which finds better versions of all your favorite pantry, snacking, and home essentials without the added junk, dyes, and fillers. Plus, it's all delivered straight to your door. So if you're looking to shop at a grocery store that actually cares about your health, go to thrivemarket.com/podcast and you'll get 30% off your first order and a free gift.
You got problems that you ought to be concerned with. Moolah! You don't know how you're supposed to earn it or what to do with it or how to keep it. You're a freak with a dark, shameful secret. But you're not the only one. Get your hidden financial fears with a blast of sun. Now your healing has begun. It's Bad with Money with
Gabe S.
Dunn.
Hello and welcome to Bad with Money, a show about finances and feelings where we don't talk down to you. I'm your host, Gabe S. Dunn, and with me today is Carrie Sun. Can you tell my audience who you are and what you do?
Hi, Gabe. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. It's such a pleasure to be here. I love your podcast. My name is Carrie Sun. I am the author of the memoir Private Equity, and I used to work in finance. I started my career off as a quantitative equity investment analyst at Fidelity Investments. And then after that, I worked at a couple very large hedge funds. I quit the world of high finance a few years ago to get my MFA in creative writing. And it took a few years, but now I'm out with my first book. And I'm really excited to be speaking with you today.
Okay, so explain any of that. What was your job?
Yeah. Great. So at Fidelity Investments, in college, I had majored in math and finance, minored in economics. And after that, I wanted to I originally thought I would solve the problem of the stock market. I thought that if I could find some sort of pattern, and this is actually in the book, it wasn't to make money for myself, but I thought I would share it with the world and everyone would kind of be able to get a little bit richer from that. And the reason why I thought that and I wanted to solve the stock market is because, I grew up initially when I was very young in poverty. My parents had just immigrated from China after the Cultural Revolution, and we were really, really struggling financially. Eventually, they got their graduate degrees from Michigan State University, and then we were able to move up to the middle class. But those years really affected me emotionally, psychologically, and I could see how much financial security and money affected my family positively and kind of helped my parents both be in a better mood with each other, with me. And I just really thought that just a little bit more money could really help solve so many family problems. And so I thought that if I were given the chance to work in equity stock markets, maybe I could find a mathematical pattern there and share it with the world. The reality of that experience turned out to be very, very different. I did work on building stock selection models and portfolio optimization and trying to figure out, what factors might be predictive of the stock market. But ultimately, as with many things, the kind of ideal or what you have in your mind about what a situation is going to be and what it is turned out to be very, very different. And the culture of my first job in finance at Fidelity was also very difficult because it was very unkind, I would say, to women and to people of different and marginalized backgrounds. And it just was not supportive in any way. And so I had to quit, and I thought I would do a pivot. I ended up enrolling at Wharton and UPenn. I was in a joint degree program. I got there and then I realized that I didn't really want to go through with my business school degree because school is expensive and I didn't want to, either take out loans or spend $200,000 to get my MBA because I felt that afterward, I wasn't sure I wanted to continue on the finance path. And I didn't want to take on the debt if I wasn't sure that I was going to be in a career afterward that would allow me to pay that back. And so I kind of just dropped out and spent several years just trying to figure out my life. And figuring out one's life, I think, is an expensive endeavor because it takes time and time takes money. You have to live. And so I was burning through my savings all that time, but I felt like I had to do it. There was no other way. And this is the start of my book. A recruiter reached out to me via LinkedIn with a job opportunity to work as the assistant to a hedge fund billionaire. And I was like, sold to me as a once in a lifetime opportunity. This is going to be amazing. And I threw myself into that recruiting process. It was 14 interviews. And as soon as my recruiter pitched me for this role, someone from their side called and said, can you come in for an in-person interview in 2 hours? And so that just gives you a sense of the pace at which that kind of work and that working style in that world at the center of Wall Street and global finance, how they really think about time and work itself. And so that's the start of my book. And that's how I ended up here. And I wrote the book and I'm here on the podcast today.
Oh my God. Okay. Wow. Okay. You're being very magnanimous, but you got to that job. You're clearly brilliant and you have all these like good intentions. And then what was the culture? Like what's happening? And also what year is this? Cause I'm sure people are listening going, oh, when did she work in finance? In the 80s? And it's like, no.
Yes, I worked there from 2014 to the end of 2016. My story kind of ends right when, that unfortunate famous event of the end of 2016.
Sure.
And so it's really kind of showing the 2010s in which there was a record long bull market. And there was still, I think, a tech idealism and utopianism hope to the world that, everything could just work out for everybody if we just work hard and lived well. And, obviously that turned out to be false. And so throughout 2014 and 2016, I think the culture of my job was one of an extreme focus on return on time. There was not a single second that was wasted. Sometimes I would be speaking to my boss in the book and I might take an extra second or two to think about an answer and he would cut me off and say, can you speak faster? Sometimes I would have to wait outside the bathroom if he was going to the bathroom and then deliver information in the 10 seconds it took him to walk from the bathroom to the next meeting. It was just every second was completely utilized. And even if the second wasn't, your second wasn't working, you were expected to be on call. So when you're on call, I don't consider that actual rest because at any time you might have to completely change your schedule around. And I just think psychologically as workers and as humans, being able to plan your day, plan your next hour and how you work is so important for our sense of agency and power and control over our lives. And I just didn't have that. So there was an extreme pressure to do a lot of work fast. And it was just this cycle that never stopped. And I completely, by the time I was able to take a breath, 2 years had gone by. I was completely burnt out, both physically and emotionally and mentally. And I knew I needed to make a huge change. And so I quit.
where's the fire? Is it just that there's like a lot of money on the line? Is it self-importance? Why do they think that way?
That is such a great question, because I personally think they don't have to think that way, right? But I think there is in sort of that financial world, everything is about kind of having an edge and gaining an information edge and advantage. And the more you can work to try to get that information or that edge is just going to hopefully, I mean, this is the belief of investors, I believe, translate into hopefully more positive returns, both for yourself and for your limited partners, the investors in the fund. So, I think in my book, I'm questioning, is this the right model of success? And is this how we want to work? Where every second of our day is totally optimized, and even rest itself is optimized. Rest is not real rest. It's to rest so you can work better Monday morning. Even for people who are able to last in that way of work. And I just don't think the attitude of, how long did you last? I lasted 2.5 years at this job. Other people lasted, 10. I just don't think more is better. Like, why are we assigning a higher value for the ability to take burnout and what I think is inequitable treatment and just enduring, I think enduring exploitation on the behalf of bosses and employers. I just don't think that is the way we should be framing the ability to survive burnout. I think the system of work itself and the culture around work, and I'm talking about material conditions here, just has to change. Like, I think my boss in the book was super nice, actually. He never yelled at me. He did give me bonuses, raises, and plenty of gifts. At the end of the day, what I really wanted was I wanted to be heard. I wanted to be seen. And what that means in material conditions is I really needed help.
Mm-hmm.
I needed an assistant of my own. And I would see him make decisions that are, $100 million decisions in no time. And meanwhile, here I am asking for an assistant, even a part-time assistant. And he just said no. It was very, very, very difficult to get any change and help and resource help across. And so that's what I mean by improving the material conditions of work itself.
I think there's this element too where you talked about how long you lasted, where it's like, I survived. I lasted so long in this. I made it. I survived in these like terrible conditions. Like in my industry, I think about it. It's how people talk about working at Saturday Night Live, where they'll be like, oh, it was like a grind. It was horrible. Like you didn't sleep. Everything was terrible. But I lasted, 15 years. And once you get to 15 years, it's a breeze. Or like once you game Lorne Michaels and get to like, a certain level, if you can stick it out, if you can last. But like, what exactly do you win? And also,
exactly.
And also, I think there's this hopefully reframe from, Gen Z to millennials that will do something about this, because I do think like in an industry where you're working, for example, your boss went through those conditions. His boss went through those conditions. And I'm saying his,
yes. Because yes.
The person who succeeds you is probably a certain type of, I will say, cis straight white man. So like, it's this level of mirroring each other that just keeps rewarding itself. And, and I think, there probably are people listening who are like, well, neither you nor Gabe could hack it.
But why would we want to is my question.
Yeah.
To your point of what are you winning and gaining at the end of that? Gabe, so smart what you just said, because I think about how not too long ago, I'm a millennial. When I was growing up, the kind of concept of work was if you put in your time, probably burnt out, but if you put in your time, your years, if you do the grind, there's some payoff or promised land at the end where it's going to be a little bit easier. You get the corner office, you can, like go on the golf course Friday afternoons, whatever it is, you want to do. And you're totally right. It's probably a he. And so that is, why you might put in 15 years of burnout just to get to that point. But I think something happened in the last, I'm going to say probably decade-ish. And I really look at people like Elon Musk is a great example of this, where it's, you get to that level of CEO and all you get is to add more CEO jobs on your plate, and he's like CEO of multiple companies. And so the point is, once you get to a high level of the C-suite, the corner suite, where you can relax, the status there is no longer like, oh, I'm going to take an afternoon off to kind of recharge or go, do the thing I really want to do. It's like, no, I'm actually going to take the status and become CEO of like 5 other startups that I'm doing, and so we're no longer, so that kind of what's at the end of the rainbow there is just more work. It's not, any way healthier or a kind of better relationship with work. So I just, yes, that is I think what is in need of reframing, and I think is a generational difference from when I grew up to now.
Do you think that there's, and I've witnessed this, I'm comparing it to entertainment. Do you think that there is this element of, I'm a marginalized person, I survived this treatment, or I survived to get to be, because I'm like these guys, to be like these guys, that's rewarded. And when I see another marginalized person who can't play the game, I'm like, well, I don't want anything to do with them, or I don't want to help them, or I don't want to, I'm not going to bring this person up under me or whatever, because I'm still trying to survive and I'm getting rewarded for being like these guys.
Yeah. I think there is a absolute kind of entrenching of the system whereby people in power reward, both in terms of promotions and compensation, those who have similar values to them. And I think just this, like, I toughed it out, so you should, so my boss in the book, even when I came to him with my burnout, and it was like well documented, I had already been really trying hard to solve it on my own for 2 years. 2 years I was trying. And he kind of gave me a lecture on how he was burnt out for 10 plus years. So, if he thinks I'm so tough, and if he said, if I can do it, I think you can too. And, but I don't want to. And also, I have many sort of critiques and ways to unpack that statement of his, but it's also like, he is an equity owner. He owns his fund. And so his burnout, he's putting in, he gets all the reward of that burning out for someone else. It's my white male billionaire boss.
Yeah.
And where he gets to totally decide how he pays me, which I felt was actually, I felt like I was doing 3 jobs and getting paid for 1. So on the surface, it's like, was I fairly compensated for my role? I would say in one way, if you're just taking a look at, my job, like, sure. But if you actually take a look at what I was doing and what he expected of me, like, I don't think it was really fair. And this is why I want to, and my book is titled Private Equity, but because I think giving equity and giving actual ability for other people to both take ownership over their work product and be able to invest in their work and themselves, I think is everything. And I don't want to burn out for someone else and just hope that they recognize my value and hope that they pay me and hope that they promote me after a few years.
Oh boy, can your finances take a hit during the holidays. I've definitely had stuff come up that I, forgot about last minute, gifts for people, realizing I don't have something for someone's +1 or significant other, trying to put together meals. I mean, you can think you've thought everything through for the holidays, and oh boy, might it take a while to recover financially. But we all get it, you know what I mean? Like, we're trying to spend time with people and make the most of it and have this magical time that we all look forward to all year long. We spend more than we should during the holidays. Take control of your finances by using a Chime checking account with features like no monthly or maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or get paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Learn more at chime.com/badmoney. I am notorious for forgetting about automatic payments, and then I overdraft. I have had a history of overdrafting my account. It's horrible. There's tons of fees. There's even fees for going below a certain number, even if you aren't overdrafting. Like, it is such a relief to have a Chime account that allows you to overdraft up to $200 with no fees. It's a financial tech company with a sense of community. You can have temporarily increased overdraft limits with boosts from friends. Join the millions of Chime members who are working on financial progress. Chime helps with fee-free overdraft up to $200. Your next deposit is applied to your balance. Get spotted on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. No monthly fees or maintenance fees. Over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. To date, Chime has spotted members over $32 billion in transactions through SpotMe. Friends give friends a boost. Eligible members get complimentary boosts to temporarily increase a friend's SpotMe limit. When you give a boost, they can boost you back to temporarily raise your limit. Set up direct deposit in your Chime account. After a qualifying direct deposit of $200 plus, Chime will notify you to enroll in SpotMe. With an activated debit card, Chime will spot you up to $200 on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. Your next direct deposit is applied to your negative balance. Chime never charges overdraft fees for using SpotMe. Enjoy the holidays while keeping your financial goals on track with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/badmoney. That's chime.com/badmoney. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. members FDIC. SpotMe eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Direct deposit timing depends on submission of payment file. Boosts are available to eligible Chime members enrolled in SpotMe and are subject to monthly limits. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs and for OTC withdrawals.
Every day, thousands of Comcast engineers and technologists like Kunle put people at the heart of everything they create.
The way that I approach work post-fatherhood has really been trying to understand the generation that we're building devices for. Here at the Comcast family, we're building an integrated in-home Wi-Fi solution for millions of families like my own.
Now millions of families can work, learn, and play together under one roof. Visit ComcastCorporation.com to learn more.
What is Dax, are you?
Tracking all our cars on Carvana Value Tracker on all our devices? Yes, Kristen, yes, I am.
Well, I've been looking for my phone for
In Dax's domain, we see all. So we always know what our cars are worth.
all of them.
All of them. Value surge, trucks up 3.9%.
That's a great offer.
I know. Sell?
Sell.
Track your car's value with Carvana Value Tracker today.
Well, it's not even about compensation, the number for compensation. It's the what you're describing that's important, because I think people might say, oh, well, she was making so much money at this job, whatever, which, by the way, you can hoard that money away and never use it. But I do understand that people are like, well, she's probably making six figures. But think about it in terms of your own workplace. Let's say you work at a small, you work at a Gap, you work at a whatever. Like the model is still the same, which is the person at the top makes a huge amount of money. We just had Madeline Pendleton on describing it as a pyramid scheme or an MLM, right? The person at the top makes money. Hey, work under me. I'll give you some of my profits for what you do for me. Get some people under you. They'll work for profits a little bit under you. And nobody is being fairly compensated for what they do. And you could go back and listen to that episode with Madeline, but it's like, that's the thing. It's like, take the model. Don't hate the people working in this system. Take the model and apply it to like your system of career. It doesn't make any fucking sense. And and it's like you're working to make someone else wealthy. People understand it when it comes to rents and mortgages, right? They go, well, if you're paying rent, you're paying someone else's mortgage. Yeah. I mean, that's not necessarily true, but yeah. But if you're working yourself to the bone, you're doing that for someone else.
Yes, exactly. I'm working. In the book, I fall on a treadmill answering my boss's email because I was expected to respond to emails instantly. I'm sacrificing my health, physically, mentally. I'm also sacrificing my dreams. Initially, I took this job thinking this was going to be my day job and I wanted to do an evening MFA. That did not happen at this job. And I was just sacrificing all of me, my identity and my time that I will never get back, to fully enrich someone else. And I don't think that's a fair model. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting too. So there was this girl on TikTok and she made this video that was like, your boss mad at you when you miss an 8 a.m. meeting, but you work from 9 to 5. And it's, and the comments, I always look at the comments, and the comments are interesting because some of the comments are like, well, why would you miss a meeting? Or like, just come to the 8 a.m. meeting. I don't understand. And then other people were like, did you notice that it says her job is from 9 to 5? That is the job. And so some people are like, well, why do other people have to come to the meeting and you don't? And like the disparity in the comments is always very fascinating to me, because some people might say, well, what, you're going to work at this job? Why would this job, allow you to take a college classes in something else? And it's like, it's none of their fucking business what I'm doing after 5 p.m.
Exactly. And to everything you just said, something that I think about a lot is our need to have clearly defined roles that are clearly in the job description.
Mm-hmm.
And so that TikTok, post that you just talked about with the comments, if it says 9 to 5, it's 9 to 5. And you can't just change the, job description and expect the employee to be okay with it, because that's just not fair. You can't unilaterally change the position, and I think, so I really think defining it, and, I think job descriptions that list responsibilities also, I think have been, I think there's like a leakage and a creeping of the responsibilities to just expand to include anything everywhere all the time. And, certainly my role is just to there was at least one line of the 97 lines, I think there were. One of them was just to be able to do anything and chip in at any time. And it's like, well, what does that actually mean? What about Friday at 11:32 p.m.? Like, it technically means that, and so I think to help just work the system of work in general, I think we need to be clear about these boundaries, and then to also, as a culture, to collectively judge people less for just sticking to their job description. And I think that I think I have such admiration for people who just stand up for, this is what I'm compensated for, this is what I sign up for, and why should I just allow unilaterally my employer to relax those conditions and include more work?
Yeah, this person was saying the response is then, oh, will I be paid overtime for the hour before?
Exactly.
And I was like,
Exactly.
Well, here's the other thing is that in your case, they just fire you and replace you with another drone. And then they, in their minds, go, well, it sucks that we hired that Asian woman. We shouldn't have.
Yes, exactly. And just, yes. And I feel like there is this attitude of, I felt like in this job, I had to perform kind of a gratitude of like, everyone was reminding me all the time how lucky I was to have this job and, to be in conversation with my boss, to be working for him. And, to be fair to all that, I did feel some of that, right? Like I felt a security at my job that otherwise I wouldn't have. I felt like I very often was doing very interesting things, but the overwhelming feeling was like, why should I be grateful for something when I feel like I work hard, I deserve this? And then the need to perform that gratitude, like he wanted to know that I knew how appreciative he wanted me to express my appreciation. And, I felt like I adequately did, but sometimes I'm sure I didn't. And I just couldn't perform it more because I felt like I was, I felt like I deserved everything because I worked really hard. And yes. And so to your point of, here's another, just me, I am Asian and I identify as a woman. And they thought perhaps that, I don't know how much of this was explicit, but I think just in general, not only with my boss here, but just I have had a long career in finance. Just the idea that like being a woman and being Asian, that I might need the job more or that I might work harder because I need the job more. And so I felt like a lot of my work and background and identity was actually exploited by my employers. At my first job at Fidelity Investments, when I tried to change because of their really, I would say, just toxic culture with quite a bit of sexual harassment, unfortunately. When I tried to change jobs, I met with a recruiter and the recruiter told me immediately, listen, 2008 or something, 2009. He was like, and he himself was Asian. He said, you have 2 strikes going against you already for another job. You're Asian and you're a woman. And I just thought, like, just to have that framing from someone who's trying to help me get the job so then the recruiter or someone else might think, well, then if I do get an opportunity, even after having 2 strikes against me, I must feel so lucky, and I will work harder, and I will be more appreciative. I will do extra homework and extra work on top of what is required just because I might be so lucky, and so I absolutely do feel, very lucky in many, many respects. But at the same time, I think that's kind of hiding some of these structural issues of particularly women and people of marginalized backgrounds, their labor being exploited often.
Oh, I don't think you have to feel lucky at all. Fuck them.
Oh, okay.
I don't think you have to feel lucky at all. No, fuck them. That's not what I was saying. The fact that they're even using those as demerits is like ridiculous. No, those are strikes against you. And you're supposed to be like, well, how do I fix them? Bitch, no.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, I don't. You're like,
Thank you for saying
being
that.
like, oh, well, I am coming from no, fuck them. I could say that. Sometimes on shows, I'm like, the people are like, yes, I agree. But it's just like, I have to be like, yeah, whatever. So this is just a personal question. Have you seen Fair Play, or is that going to be way?
Yes.
You saw it?
Oh, yes. I mean, everyone was like, you have to see it because, well, also, I think I forgot her last name, Chloe something. She's the director, Chloe Demont.
Oh, yeah,
She
Demont,
also
yeah.
had written for, Demont. She had written for Billions. And there actually is a character on Billions, character based off of me. And I met with her. Yeah, I think she was in the 2nd season, I believe. And she was the chief of staff, right-hand woman to the major hedge fund manager in Billions named Axe. And she was amazing. I love that character. And so I when I saw Fair Play with Chloe Demont as the writer, I believe, and the director, I was like, I have to see this. It's like a relationship set at a hedge fund, and it's all about control, money, but really it's just a psychological war, all out war between these 2 characters. And the reason why that movie was so interesting to me is because, so my book is set at work. It's primarily a work story, but there's also a big personal story in there. And one of them is my ex-fiance, and he and I had a relationship, unfortunately, like the 2 main characters in Fair Play.
Oh no, you both worked at the hedge fund?
Well, he didn't work at the same hedge fund, but he had worked in hedge funds, and he just was extremely, I will say, he used this word, jealous of any kind of positive movement in my career.
Yeah.
And he was so jealous of something related to my career, such that he could not even hear me talk about my job. I would mention the name of my company. I would mention my boss, and he would cut me off and say, stop talking about him. And I was just like, wow. And the better I performed at my job, the more he tried to undermine me by controlling other aspects of my life, including my diet, my tone of voice, my emotions. And it was just a full out, I think, psychological war. And it had to do with power dynamics in relationships and money and control. So yeah, sorry. That was a long-winded answer to your question of Fair Play.
No.
Yeah. Your turn.
No, it's very relevant and I think relatable, and I'm sorry that happened. And like, I think like there is the plot of Fair Play is this couple that is like sort of semi-perfect, and they get engaged and they both work at this hedge fund, and their relationship is secret, and they think that he's going to get promoted. And then she gets promoted, and he loses his fucking mind slowly over the movie. And all of his like stuff comes out, toxic misogyny and jealousy and all these things that he thought of himself or whatever. It's horrifying. It's like a horror movie, but it's real.
An O'Reilly Auto Parts gift card is the perfect gift for that hard-to-buy for person. Give the gift of convenience from O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Okay, sorry. I'm still stuck on she put a character in Billions about you. You consulted with her?
I consulted with the two, I think they're co-showrunners, Brian Koppelman and David Levine.
Wow.
And they were the ones that asked me to come in I went into the Billions writers room, and they asked me to speak about my job and just who I am as a character. And it was very interesting because I thought that they might focus on my firm or more my work relationships, and they really cared about me as a character. And that was a very clear moment in my life when I was sitting across from them. It was a table full of writers. So it was like eight or 10 writers or something. And we were having lunch, and I was really like, I don't, thinking this to myself, but I don't want to be doing what I'm doing. I want to be doing what you're doing.
Aww.
They were writers. They were brilliant. Like, they understood both the technical workings of hedge funds, but also just the sharp psychological aspects of these games that people play, especially when power and, capital and high amounts of money are at stake and in play. And it was I just thought they were the most brilliant people ever. And so at the end of that interview, Brian asked me, like, he said, you're so interesting. We were originally going to make this character a man. I think now we'll have to make her a woman. Can we make this character Chinese too? Or is that going to be too revealing and obvious? And I told him, no, go ahead. And then when I watched the show, she was in fact super brilliant and super amazing. And they made her a woman of color. I think she went to West Point. It was like years ago, so I can't.
Yeah.
It's just a Black woman of a color who went to West Point, super sharp, and was just really able to speak confidently with an authority. And she would not let it was all men around her kind of diminish her own sense of self-worth. And I thought that was incredible.
That's so interesting to come from this back. I think a lot of times with writing, people come from these situations, these backgrounds, but they're not able to convey to other people what happened because it is so subtle. The manipulation is so subtle. The ability for things to be toxic is so subtle. People will say, you said, my boss didn't scream at me. But that's like, you understand that that's like an abuse tactic, right? Where you're like, well, he never yelled at me. And I was thinking when you said that, the bar is on the floor. Like, what do you mean he never yelled at you? Like, and I'm not sort of pushing you, but I am saying, like, it is this thing where you lose track of what's normal and you start to be like, look, he never yelled at me and he did give me bonuses. Yeah, that's called a job.
Yes, exactly.
Like,
that should be just
that's
baseline.
a job,
yeah.
Carrie. Like, that's, but I think we're taught these things that become normalized where you're like, well, I don't want to seem like I'm complaining or, and I think that's only really asked of, a certain subset of person. So,
yes,
I do think that then to come out of that experience and be able to explain it in a book and be able to like hope that people like get it. I understand it's hard because look, I look at the comments on TikTok. Clearly people are not into subtlety. So, I do think that if you're listening to this and you are having these similar thoughts or you work somewhere where you are thinking like, well, it's not that bad. Your threshold for what is not that bad is constantly being manipulated into rising.
Exactly.
That's what's happening.
And only with time and distance do I realize now that I was being set up to fail and that my bar for, quote, a good billionaire, it was just so low. I'm like, I was telling myself, well, he's great compared to all the other billionaires. And I'm like, but why? I should have super high, moral and ethical and behavioral expectations of every billionaire. It's not like good for billionaires. I love what you're saying. Yeah, it's the question is, where is the bar set and why why is that the assumption of behavior? And why can't we raise our assumptions for equitable treatment, from billionaires? Like I think that's so.
Why was he a billionaire? How did he get his money?
He grew up fairly, by fairly I mean very, very privileged, already in these networks of money, capital, private school, boarding school, East Coast elite.
Okay.
And through those networks, he was able to, make connections with friends and certain people who eventually introduced him to this kind of major figure in the hedge fund space.
Mm-hmm.
And this major figure in the hedge fund space took him in. He worked as an analyst there. And then when he was ready to go out on his own, he's fairly early, his mentor just was like, here's some millions of dollars for you to go out on your own. And, it's too easy. And so it's like, the question, I think there's an interesting question, like, is he self-made? He didn't inherit his billions, but at the same time, being in those networks, which are closed to certainly people like me and many other people, if you don't already have access to those networks from the beginning, I think time is of the essence here, because with just this financial idea of compounding, he was able to getting these networks early, start his career early, and kind of start his fund when he was still really young. And therefore, it's kind of like one of the things about Warren Buffett is if you invest and if you keep on investing over 50 years, compounding will take care of, if you do it well, will take care of a lot of your wealth, exponential increase in wealth. That's how he made his billions. And so when I started working for him, he had debuted on a list, and there are all these lists, of the youngest billionaires in America.
Sure.
So
what is the thought process, do you think, behind, I don't think I'll solve world hunger today? If you don't know, it's fine, because I'm asking you, like, what does a crazy person think?
This is such a fantastic question, because I think something I think a lot about with respect to my former boss, because he really did care. And, I don't know about now, but certainly when I worked with him, he cared about ethics, he cared about morality, and he cared to be a, so-called, like, he would never use this term, but good billionaire.
Sure.
He just really cared about doing the right thing. When writing this book, I was thinking, he could quit if he wanted to.
Yeah.
And what is keeping him there to, he has X billions of dollars. Why is he still working, still burning out to make X 2X, And so he even tells me that I asked him at one point, it was one of these rare moments where I could tell he was a little more open than he otherwise normally would be. And we talked about, I asked him, what was your American dream? And he answered so quickly, like without even thinking. And it was to be a surgeon. He really wanted to be a surgeon. And I just was like, well, why are you a hedge fund manager? Like, I think whatever is keeping a certain, I don't want to speak for all, but I think my former boss is not the only person who might think this way. I think for a lot of these hedge fund billionaires, I think that what's keeping them there is something beyond making the next billion.
Yeah.
It has something to do with the story they tell themselves, about their own identity, about their own worth. And it's just really hard to change people's stories about themselves. And when they tell themselves they need to do something for some reason, he needs to do it for a reason other than money, I think. Of course, I don't know for sure, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, appreciate you diving into the psyche. I guess I asked sort of an impossible question, but where can people find you and your book and more about you? Thank you so much for being so open on the show.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today, Gabe. Like, I also have to say that I think I read somewhere that maybe you wrote for Big Mouth.
I did, yeah.
Correct? Okay. I have 3 epigraphs in my book. This epigraph didn't make it in, but I am obsessed with this quote from Big Mouth. And I don't know if you know it. You definitely do. I think it's with Coach Steve, where he says something like, in the future, your options are to be a Lyft driver or a billionaire. And I just really love that and that was kind of, I was throwing around 6 different epigraphs. Unfortunately, this didn't make the cut.
Yeah.
But I just loved how that so succinctly and brilliantly captured the winners take all society and economy that we're living in, where it's either you're spiraling up to be a billionaire or you're kind of stuck in this world of Lyft driving, And so those are the 2 options. And I in this podcast and with you, I question why and could there be more options, And so that's what I'm trying to raise these exact questions in my book, Private Equity, and people can find me on Instagram. I'm at Carrie E. Sun, CarrieYisun. Anyone can feel free to email me through my website, carriesun.com. Thank you, Gabe. It was wonderful to speak to you today.
Bad with Money with Gabe Shane Dunn is a production of Noted Bisexual, produced by Melisa D. Monts and Diamond MPrint Productions, edited by Diane King, post-production sound by Coco Llorens, and music by Mike Kaplan, Zach Sherwin, and Jack Dolgen, as sung by Sam Barbera. Thank you, love you, bye!
231. That's the average number of apps used by many companies. This leads to a lot of context and tab switching that drains employee focus and costs your company. Grammarly can help. Grammarly's AI works in over 500,000 apps and websites, making it easy for your team to write clearly and on brand without disrupting workflow. Join 70,000 teams who save an average of $5,000 per employee per year using Grammarly. Go to Grammarly.com/enterprise to learn more.
Yeah, sure thing. Hey, you sold that car yet?
Yeah, sold it to Carvana.
Oh, I thought you were selling to that guy.
The guy who wanted to pay me in foreign currency, no interest, over 36 months? Yeah, no. Carvana gave me an offer in minutes, picked it up, and paid me on the spot. It was so convenient.
Just like that.
Yeah?
No hassle.
None.
That is super convenient.
Sell your car to Carvana and swap hassle for convenience. Pickup fees may apply.